Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahab Jama, aka Jet, and I am the Community Health and Wellness Coordinator at ETSS. Welcome to today's training on addressing emergency response, disaster preparedness, and culturally tailored behavioral health response services for the Somali community. The training is the 4th training in the series, and we have 2 more trainings left after this. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. If you're in person, please silence your phone. If you are joining virtually, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to today's training on behavioral health disaster planning and response for the Somali community. This was a 2024 study that we did with 5 refugee communities. The study was titled Culturally and Linguistically Appropriate Emergency Preparedness and Crisis Response for Ohio's Resettled Communities. Here are the following authors. If you want to get access to the report, please pull out your phone and scan the QR code, but you can also just search the title of the report and you should be able to find it on the Gov delivery system. It's a very comprehensive report, and for today's training, we're basically going to break down the report. The main report, it talks about all of the 5 communities at once, but we planned these trainings so that the first training was an overview of all of the 5 communities, and each training after that was for a specific community. So today we'll be looking at the Somali community. Before we get started, here are just some group agreements. First, AI note takers are not allowed in state meetings or trainings. This session is being recorded and will be made publicly available. For people that are in person, this is where the camera is, so the camera is not catching you, but I know there's a few presenters, so I just wanted to let you know. You are welcome to use the chat and Q&A. This is for virtual presenters. You are welcome to use the chat or the Q&A feature to ask questions or communicate with me or the other presenters. You feel free to also drop questions throughout the presentation in the chat, and if it's directed to the Somali community, we'll try to have somebody from the Somali community answer if possible. So now I just wanted to do some acknowledgements. So first I wanted to acknowledge Ohio MOS, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. The 2 people are Liz Poprocki, which is the Behavioral Health Treatment Coordinator, and Dr. Adhikari, which is the Administrator for Disparity Research Lead, QPR. I also want to acknowledge Suzanne Schaefer, the Director of Adult Services at that time, and now she's still a director, but she is, I think, for the EEE program, and I don't know her exact title. And then Amy Harkar is the current Director of Community Health and Safety at ETSS, and I wanted to thank both of them for their dedication and project leadership. And I also wanted to thank the entire ETSS Community Health and Wellness team. Throughout the whole grant, they put in a lot of work, and you're going to see the hard work that we put into this grant today. And then also Israel, thank you so much, Israel, for the work that you did with the Ethiopian community and the youth focus group. So now I wanted to acknowledge the community-based organization that we worked with for the Somali community. We worked with Forward Step Education. The contact information is provided there, and the contact person is Dr. Dorothy Hassan. So this is just a brief webinar outline. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start with, right after this, the Somali presentation, and then we'll go into the rest of the research project. Here are the questions that the Somali community will be covering in today's presentation, and I will go ahead and allow them to come to the podium now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for such a hospitable welcome. We are absolutely humbled to be able to share some of the things that are going on in the community in an effort to make that there are services to help make things wonderful for people who are striving and critical parts of the community. I am Dorothy Hassan. Today I am co-presenting with Ashraf Noor and Jibril Omar.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashraf Noor. I'm a housing research specialist, and I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. That's where my family were settled back in 1997.
And my name is Jibril Omar. I'm currently an LPN in nursing school. My family came here in 1997, and I was born in Kentucky. And so I've been in Columbus pretty much all my life.
Yeah, I'm gonna use your teacher voices. I have a teacher voice that I always have in my pocket. So I ask everyone else to use their teacher voice. As we get right into it, the Somali community, if you've been able to attend any of the trainings before, you'll see that there's this undertone that is similar with many of the immigrant communities. But the Somali community was also suffering the trauma of civil unrest and government instability. And that is what brought so many of the community members to different regions outside of the home country.
This is the Somali map. Somali is known as the longest coastline in Africa. We're also known as the Horn of Africa. And the Somali flag, the color blue stands for the sky and Indian Ocean. The star stands for the unity of Somalia, Djibouti, Northern Somali, Ogaden land, which is partial right now, Ethiopia, and northeastern Garissa, which is Kenya. Majority of us left Somalia due to civil war that started early in 1991. During 1970s, the Ogaden war, which is why majority of Somalis that right now they live in Ethiopia because it was part of Somalia, and we left Somalia due to civil war, clan-based, and which lead later on for us to be our neighbor countries such as Kenya as refugees and Ethiopia and Sudan, which led drought to famine and mass refugee flows.
The Somali community has been in Ohio since the 90s. This is important to note because there has been a long enough time for the Somali community to become a very important part of the fibers of the state of Ohio.
As I said in the previous that my family, we were settled in Fargo, North Dakota, late 1997. We had some relatives that had been here in Columbus, Ohio. Minnesota is the first largest Somali community. Columbus is the second largest community, and third is Seattle, Washington. My family later on back in 2000, late 2008, we moved secondary immigrated here at Columbus, Ohio.
And so I do want to add that the first wave of the Somali immigrants arrived about 3 decades ago, which first gen and second generations have studied here and are dedicating a lot to Columbus, Ohio, with also with generational wealth and being part of the community.
So again, it's wonderful how all of this training was formatted to make sure that every community got a special time to share with you in this training. Because again, like I mentioned, there are some similarities, but there are some unique cultural traditions that should be at the forefront of different professionals in Ohio.
And with that being said, Dr. Dorothy, we had here's a list of our cultures, and I'm going to just point out two things, which is an aspect, which is a clan. So some majority of the Somalians in Columbus obviously come from the clan system, which is essential to identify and social support system and conflict with resolutions. We are known for our hospitality and our generosity, which is an inclusion of sharing food and resources. With the adaptive aspect is a strong and entrepreneurship and spirit and resilience. So we use those together to be a good part of the community.
We're thankful that, again, in this space, we get to recognize how much the Somali community has been a part of giving back to Ohio. Here specifically in Central Ohio, we know that the Somali community contributions are a part of what has been a revival of the economy in this area.
And speaking of giving back, here are the list of the areas. So I just want to first start by saying that the education and the entrepreneurs that we have within our Somali community are real estate agents, nurses, doctors, who then facilitate their skills to give back is in the youth programs. With also, we have two Somali state representatives. Their names are Ismail Mohammed and Munir Abdullahi, who do a great job and advocating and being a great part of the community. And we do also have one Somali school board member who is new for Westerville, and her name is Anisa. So we use all of these resources together in Columbus, Ohio, to really shine and make a difference.
And while we talk about Central Ohio, we also want to use this opportunity to thank the community members who have joined us today with the work that they're doing in collecting and organizing Somali youth, and also making sure that there is civic presence even in some of the outlanding suburbs like Hilliard, Ohio. Thank you again for joining us today. Like many communities, regardless of where their native land is, the Somali community has experienced disaster here in the state of Ohio. We have some of these instances that were so prevalent in the community that they're also noted in the news, noted in the literature, and we're just going to talk about some specifics of a few.
Recently, a couple years ago, we had Northtown Apartments, which is based in North Columbus, which had a major gas leak and a water leak. The majority of those apartments, it's elders, Somalis, they don't have youth or children around here, so we had a issue with the landlord. So the Somali community and legal aid, thanks to legal aid, we helped them with their bills, and like they've been getting like $2,000 for electric bill, and which they only live like one apartment room or two. And the travel ban, which cost not only the people back home in the refugee camps in Kenya. I have family members that have been waiting over 3 decades to just come here. It also affects our family members over here.
The youth, it does really have a big impact because sometimes there's not a lot of resources or activities or things that the youth can preoccupy their time with. So that does bring them also in the disaster experiences, with also crowd control incidents of 2012, along with my co-host. With the travel ban, it does have a huge impact on families with dislocation, not knowing whether to start a life here or continue out with other family members and bringing them here. So altogether, these are disasters that our community has experienced. And for the challenges, thank you. Here are a list of the challenges also and their impact during the disasters. For example, if we use language barriers, I know two languages, is English and Somali, but relatively, if you're speaking about the, Somali language, English is their second languages, and language barriers do misinterpret, and people are not understanding the language, so there's that barrier there with even medical, healthcare, and there's also fear of authorities in the community, so they really don't know the language, which prevents them to be and have that resource. And with the successes, I just want to point out a few of them. So we have young women engagement and with the youth as well. And then there's leadership in the Somali community, which is our advocates and public health and non-profit organizations. Then strengthening social networking and leadership is some of the successes. With also being said, the first gen and generational wealth, that has a big impact in our success because they're not only getting the education, but they're also changing the status quo.
So just some advice about things that we'd like to bring to the attention of behavioral health providers. There are some improvements that we suggest be made. Cultural humility trainings, let's do this more often. Let's make trainings not a one-off experience, but be creating dialogues with the communities that you're serving. Gender-specific accommodations, please keep in mind that the traditional and Islamic traditions that the Somali community holds near and dear, when we talk about retention rates and the likelihood of patients actually following through with treatments, we want to make sure that female patients are matched with female clinicians and vice versa. And this is especially important also even in the intake experience, to make sure that people have this space to actually tell their experience, talk about what's really bothering them or impacting them. That gender-specific accommodation is important. Telephone interpreters for sensitive subjects, keeping in mind that our co-hosts shared about how tight a community this is. It can get pretty awkward if there are people from the community that are getting involved in the particulars and the sensitive business of behavioral health. Lastly, I would recommend that everyone not just show up during an emergency. We talked about some of the things that are present, the infrastructure that is already in the community. Invest in the community in different ways. Make sure that you are frequenting the restaurants that we talked about. Make sure when you have different training opportunities, different leadership and mentorship opportunities, that you're calling on the Somali professionals from the community that are well-trained and already have that cultural dexterity to best serve the community. Yep, if you write any questions in the chat, I guess we have just a little bit of time to attend any questions in the chat, so you can throw it in the chat, and we'd be happy to share what we have. Otherwise, do feel free to take note of those email addresses and reach out to us anytime. We're happy to share, and privileged and honored to start and be a part of this continuing dialogue.
Work well was the community coming together, not only the Somali community. Legal aid was there, Dr. Dorothy. We had interpreters due to language barrier. In Somali, there's Mahatiri and Maimai, so there's different dialects. There's some tenants that won't understand the Mahatiri or Maimai, so having different interpreters and the legal aid understanding, like, oh yeah, we're all Somali, but we have different dialects. So helping that, it was better for the tenants to get help right away. And due to not only language barrier, majority of them, they're illiterate. They can't write or read their own language too. So having the community together, not only Somali community, but having a America altogether. So that helped us a lot.
That was a really good question. I think just having this type of setting and addressing a safe space and having a voice for them would tremendously change their relationship with the EMS. And not only that is when emergencies do happen, Somali community may feel like the timing that the scene or the onset emergency happened, there's a delay. You know, whether you're in Cleveland Avenue, Morris, whether you're in, they feel like that there's a delay. So maybe having trainings like this and appropriating conversations would be perfect. And training young Somali youth to become an aspiring EMS like them. So that's what I was saying.
Okay, that's a handful, so that gives me a good excuse to talk for a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to cover all of those things. One, I wanted to say that my advice to EMS is to, again, just to approach this work with the intention of creating dialogue. Because we saw during COVID that when anyone waits for an emergency to arrive, it's already too late. So creating infrastructure, and just like we have, state testing of the broadcast, every single Wednesday at noon, we are making sure that that infrastructure is working, that everyone knows what it means. We have to make sure that there's something like that, not loud sirens, but something like that within the immigrant communities so that we can just push play in the case of an emergency instead of trying to get to the table and build that system. With that said, back to the very first question of something that works, that we've seen that works well in the case of emergencies, is having connections with smaller grassroots organizations that are alive and thriving all over the state. I can tell you more clearly about the ones that are right here in central Ohio, but many of them have a statewide arm. And again, because the Somali community is so familial, it is just a phone call away to the family in Toledo and in Youngstown to get that information to them. Some of those agencies that I will be kind enough to note on camera is Our Helpers. Our Helpers, and they can be found on social media, also through the website, ourhelpers.org. We have other organizations that are also dealing with behavioral health problems specifically, like GHEAD, the letter GHEAD. We have other organizations like Zamzam is a women-led organization that has been doing some work on the north side. And the other question, what was the last question, Chet, please? I think that, anytime you give a nonprofit leader a microphone, they're going to talk about money. So I will say that it has something to do with it, because I would hope that the state would really lock into investing money into grassroots organizations. We've seen that the state cannot do what it does or what it wants to do without the help of grassroots organizations. So capacity building funding to those organizations would make sure that they are in place and have that arm to do what needs to be done in the case of an emergency.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Dr. Dorothy, Ashraf, Jabril, and the Somali community. That was very informative. And if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try to address them towards the end possible. If not, we'll share your questions with, and somebody will respond to you shortly. But thank you so much for all of the great questions, and thank you for the presentation. So now we go into the community did a good job at talking about some of the gaps, and this is just some that I highlighted so that people could pay attention to. So a lot of the outreach try to do to faith-based leaders as such by going to mosques, and then they play a central role in communication. So getting the information out to them first so that they can get it out to the community. And then Somali women face increased risk due to lack of support, network, and transportation access. So just finding ways to incentivize transportation or finding them a support group, maybe that a support group for just specifically Somali women. And then few Somali representatives in local emergency, suggesting a way to get them more involved, whether it's getting them, more trainings like this, or going to the mosques and asking them, hey, what emergencies are you experiencing and how can we, help you? So let's go talk about the importance of the current webinar series now. So this hasn't changed from the times I read this slide, so importance of all of the series that we're doing. And we have 2 more after this. So it's a 6-part series, so there's the dates. So we already did the overall and the Afghan community and the Bhutanese Nepali community. Today's for the Somali community, and then on July 24th, it's for the Ethiopian and or Eritrean community, and then community. Save the dates, and if you've already attended the other ones, thank you so much for your continued support. So I will now be passing it on to Dr. Saruna to share the quantitative portion of the study.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Saruna Ghimire, and I am Associate Professor at Miami University in Ohio. I was also one of the team member from the 2024 study that Jed shared with you at the beginning of this webinar. And today I will be sharing with you the finding from quantitative part, and later Isha will be sharing the finding from the qualitative. So just to give you a brief idea of what we did before jumping into what we found. So we did a cross-sectional survey with 266 adults living in central Ohio. Participants came from 5 communities that included Afghan, Bhutanese, Congolese, Ethiopian Eritrean, and Somali. And as you know, today we are focusing on the Somali community. So we had 59 participants in the survey from the Somali community. Our recruitment was led by ETSS in collaboration with, the Forward Step Education, which is led by Dr. Dorothy Hassan. And you did hear from the team right before this presentation. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to Dr. Hassan for her incredible support during this survey. And we could not have done this without her survey. So thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. Our survey was available in both Qualtrics online system and also on paper if that's what a participant preferred. To make sure our survey was accessible, it was available in Somali, which is one of the most commonly spoken languages in Somali community. I just wanted to clarify these other languages that you see on the screen, like Amharic or Nepali, they were included for our participant from different communities. So now let's look at who took part in our survey. And over the next few slides, I will go through participants' demographic, and I will talk about their age, gender distribution, English skills, education level, and disability status, because these factors help us to understand who these participants are to make a sense of their awareness and preparedness. One point I do wanted to clarify before moving forward, in case you did not attend the prior webinars. So these findings are broken down in 2 ways. On my left, you see the overall finding that includes all 5 communities together. And on my right, you will see the results are presented just for the Somali community. This way, it helps us to understand both the unique experiences of the Somali community, but also the overall pattern across the group, so we can see the finding comparatively. Among Somali participants, the majority were less than 35 years old. Almost half of them were between the ages of 26 and 35. When we compare this age distribution with the overall population in our survey, uh, as we can see, the Somali group was relatively younger compared to the overall group. Gender-wise, more than half were women, and this strong representation from Somali women is especially praiseworthy because at the beginning we did hear that Somali women face uh, challenges to public lives and due to cultural expectation, and their voices are often underrepresented in research. So including their perspective adds critical value to our study. From emergency preparedness point of view, it is important to note that women often play a central role in family preparedness, making decisions about children, elders, and household safety. So their active participation in our survey is very encouraging, and I wanted to thank again to all these participants, especially women who participated in our survey. So this slide will help us to understand how long Somali participants have lived in Ohio and how comfortable they are with English language. As shown here, Somali participants are among most established or long settled group in our study compared to some other groups that were recently resettled. Among the Somali participants, over 80% had lived in Ohio for more than 5 years, and only about 3% were recently resettled in past year. When it comes to English proficiency, Somali participants reported significantly higher levels than the overall sample. Among the Somali participants, only about 7% said they were unable to read, write, or speak in English, which was lower than what we saw in overall sample. Now, this slide shows the level of education in our study. In the overall group, as you can see, the education level was fairly evenly distributed across the three categories. But when we look at the Somali community, most people have completed high school. Compared to the overall group, Somali participants were less likely to have completed college. Disability status was another important factor we examined because households with members with disability may encounter additional challenges during emergencies. So we asked participants about individual disability and also their caregiving responsibility for someone with disability. Among Somali participants, about 1 in 10 reported having a disability themselves. This is slightly similar or slightly higher. This is very similar or slightly higher than the rate reported in the overall group. Additionally, around 12% said that they have a household member with a disability, which is a bit lower than the overall sample, where about 15% reported having a family member or a caregiving responsibility for someone with disability. Next, now we move to Somali communities' experiences with disaster, their level of preparedness, and whether they have an emergency management plan in place. These insights will help us to understand not just what communities have experienced, but also how ready they are to respond in the future if a disaster was to happen. So first we asked participants if they had ever experienced a disaster while living in the US, and Dr. Hassan and team also presented some of these experiences, and some of these are similar but also a little bit different than what they had presented. So across all the 5 communities combined, about 20% said yes, they experienced a disaster in the US. However, among Somali participants, that number was much higher, where 30% said they had experienced a disaster. The most common type of emergency or disaster experienced by Somali participants were home fires, pandemic, financial emergency, and utility interruption. Next, we asked participants what they know about disaster preparedness and what steps they know about, if there are any. Among Somali participants, the responses were fairly evenly distributed, with about a quarter reporting each level of familiarity from being very familiar to not being familiar at all with emergency preparedness activities. These numbers are fairly similar to the overall sample, as we can see here. However, the Somali group had a slightly higher percentage of those who were not familiar at all with disaster preparedness compared to the overall group. When we looked at knowledge on specific preparedness topic among Somali participants, the most well-known topic included gathering or updating their emergency supplies, making emergency plan, making home safer, and saving money for emergencies. Next, we asked participants about 2 important aspects. The first, how likely do you think it is that a disaster will affect your area? And the second, if it did, how confident are you in your ability to respond? Among Somali participants, the majority believed a disaster was either unlikely or they said they did not know if it would happen. Only about 36% believed that a disaster was likely to occur. When it comes to confidence in responding to a disaster, if it happened in the future, only 1 in 5 felt extremely confident in their ability to respond. The majority felt either somewhat confident or not confident at all. And this is a major concern here because over half of Somali participants feel unprepared to deal with a disaster if one happens. And this points out to an important area for action for us. A preparedness program could focus on building practical skills and not just knowledge, such as community-based drills, hands-on training to help participants feel more confident and ready to take action in a time of real emergencies. Next, we asked participants whether they currently have a disaster or emergency response plan in place. And among Somali participants, about 63%, which is the majority, said that they did not have a plan. Only 37% reported having a plan, and this is slightly lower than the overall sample, where about 40% reported having a plan. For those who had a plan, the most common actions included gathering or updating emergency supplies, financial emergency management, signing up for emergency alert and warning, uh, insurance of their property or belongings, and safeguarding important documents. These all are strong first steps and much appreciated. And it suggests that there is a growing awareness and willingness to engage in emergency planning. However, it is important to recognize that about 63% of Somali households did not still have a plan in place. And this highlights an important area to continue supporting these families by providing accessible, culturally relevant. We heard this as in the presentation that Dr. Hassan presented, culturally relevant and easy to use tools for emergency preparedness. Now, let's look at some of the barriers and challenges participants faced when trying to access emergency preparedness resources. Among Somali participants, more than half said they had not faced any difficulty accessing emergency preparedness resources. Only about 3% reported having difficulty. However, I want to bring your attention to um, this part where a significant 39% said that they had never accessed any emergency preparedness resources at all. So while it was encouraging to see that most of them did not report difficulty, the fact that significant 40% have never accessed these existing resources, it points to the larger issue of awareness and outreach, and there is a need to promote these existing resources, training and other resources with these communities so that they know these things exist and is there for them to access and use when needed. We also asked participants whether they knew how to get help during an emergency, and more than half of the Somali participants said that they did not know how. This number was slightly higher than the overall sample, which suggests that Somali participants may be less connected to formal emergency services or existing resources. And this again suggests that we need to do a better outreach and marketing to increase awareness of these existing resources. Next, we asked participants about any specific reason that they may had difficulty accessing emergency preparedness services. And among Somali participants, almost half said language was a key barrier. Notably, language was also one of the most significant barrier and was consistent with overall sample and across all 5 communities that we included. Other most important or commonly reported barriers included gender and sexual orientation. Other barriers were cultural norms, religious practices, and race. We also asked participants whether they felt emergency preparedness materials were culturally appropriate. For the Somali community, the majority of participants, which is 44% to be precise, said that the material did not feel culturally appropriate. And we did again this again reinstate the point that Dr. Hassan and team presented, where there is a gap between cultural connection and existing services. Compared to other communities, Somali participants were more likely to feel that these materials were completely off base or not appropriate from cultural standpoint of view. Next, we asked participants if they had ever participated in any emergency preparedness training in recent 1 to 3 years. And for most Somali participants, the answer was no. Only about a quarter had participated in such training, but interestingly, this participation rate was slightly higher among Somali group compared to the overall sample. The lack of participation was not due to a lack of interest. For most of them, the reason for not participating in these trainings was that it did not align with their cultural practices, and there was a lack of culturally competent staff to deliver them. Additionally, about 1 in 5 Somali participants also said they simply did not know that these training existed. For other 20%, language was reported as a barrier for participating in this training. So as we can see here, to improve access to these existing training and resources and encouraging participation, emergency preparedness program should be offered in native languages. Also recognizing the fact that within Somali community or within a given community, there might be multiple languages people may speak. This training should also be led by culturally competent facilitators and promoted through trusted community channels that could include faith-based institution or community-based organization, such as the one that is run by Dr. Hassan and team. This training should be adapted to align with cultural norms because we did see that with the Somali community, there was disconnect between, existing resources and their cultural norms and expectation. So we could do a better job to align them, and they should be delivered in familiar, comfortable settings like mosque or community centers. We also looked at how often emergency preparedness is actually discussed in Somali community and what approaches work best when it is. Among Somali participants, about 68% said that their community ever talks about preparedness. So clearly, this is not a topic of regular community conversation. But we were still encouraged to see that a notable 32% reported active discussion, which is a strong starting point. This shows there is a growing awareness and interest in emergency preparedness, but clearly we need to do more to make emergency preparedness a regular topic of conversation so people are aware of what exists and where to go and seek help in the time of disaster and preparedness. And I want to reinstate what Dr. Hassan said. It's not just during or after disaster happens, but this has to be part of regular conversation because once it happens, it's already too late. When we asked about most effective ways to share information with the community, uh, our participant suggested gathering at religious or worship places. So this could be mosque for the community, social media, community meetings, and partnership with trusted community organization such as the one that Dr. Hassan runs. So again, this tells us work with existing faith-based and community structure. Use the gathering that people already attend, and that's how we can start shifting awareness and action in a way that feels comfortable and also familiar. Finally, we asked participants how emergency preparedness could be improved in their community, and their suggestions were both practical and thoughtful. The most preferred ways to receive information were text message and phone calls, followed by handout and flyers. Participants also found tools like digital resources, website, email, lesson plan, activity books to be helpful. To improve preparedness overall, they emphasized a few key strategies. The first, creating materials by the community for the community in local languages. Offering training in multiple languages, again recognizing that people within a community speak different languages. And also, language is the key barrier across the communities. The third was hiring multilingual staff who are from the community and trusted by the community. So these ideas make one thing very clear. Preparedness efforts are most effective when they are rooted in trust, built with cultural respect, and delivered in languages people live in. With this, I wrap up the quantitative survey finding, and it was my honor to be able to present this with you and also to participate in 2024 study. And with this, I wrap up and hand it over to Jet. Jet, back to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Isha Karmacharya. I'm a doctorate graduate from Miami University of Ohio. I was also involved in the 2024 study, and I had an excellent opportunity to work for ETSS for this project, majorly contributing in the qualitative part. So now we will shift to what we learned from youths through a focus group discussion. You might hear similar findings from the quantitative part and what Dr. Hassan and team emphasized earlier. However, this discussion was extremely helpful for us to know the perspective of the youth. So we spoke with 10 youth between the ages of 18 and 25, with representation from all 5 refugee communities in our study. So here I will be specifically focusing on voices of Somali youths. These youths were recruited through the ETSS Youth Advisory Panel and were all fluent in English. The session lasted about an hour and was guided by trained facilitators. We focused on 4 main areas, which were public health concerns, awareness of resources, barriers to preparedness, and youth recommending for community action. So similar to the main area, there were several important themes emerged from the focus group discussion, where first theme was on public health emergencies and crisis concerns reported by youth. Second was about awareness of resources. And third was about significant barriers and challenges. And fourth, where youth shared powerful recommendation for action to improve community preparedness. So participants highlighted several critical public health challenges within their communities, which included substance abuse, suicide, gun violence, social isolation. So here we kind of hear more mental health related issues, and Somali youth especially highlighted gun violence and drug abuse in their community. Like one youth explained, I feel like for that, it's pretty generalized, especially with gun violence and drug abuse. It's kind of meshed within a wide majority of communities. So youth shared that these issues are often unspoken or normalized and not treated as urgent concerns, which delays prevention and healing. Next, youth shared us their first go-to resources during emergencies, which were phones, Google search, social media platforms, and they put a lot of emphasis on faith-based institutions as trusted community hubs. And they said they serve as informal gathering places and coordination point during crisis. For example, participants shared if anything were to happen, like a big crisis, let's say a tornado or a shooting, everyone would convene at religious sites to figure out the course of action. Youth acknowledged that some emergency resources exist, but pointed out these services are often poorly publicized, hard to access, particularly for elders or non-English speakers. Like one participant put it clearly, there are definitely resources out there somewhere, but the issue is that finding out about them is so difficult because there are no marketing for them. Participant also mentioned that emergency preparedness is rarely promoted by community leaders. This shows a disconnection between service availability and accessibility. Like it was discussed in quantitative study, and what Dr. Hassan and team mentioned, here from the focus group discussion, youth also highlighted language barriers as one of the biggest obstacles to preparedness. Given an example of COVID-19 pandemic, they said many community members, especially older adults, could not understand health messaging and even now don't know how to call 911 or follow safety alerts. Therefore, participants emphasize the urgent need for translated emergency materials and multilingual response system to bridge this divide. Youth also reflected on how social media and outside influences have changed their communities. They expressed worries that community is growing more individualistic and fragmented, particularly among young generations who are exposed to harmful content online. For example, one participant said, I feel like a lot of it has to do with social media. People see everything online and try to be like that, losing their true selves. I have seen friends change, becoming more violent, influenced by what they see, even though they were not like that when they were younger. So another participant mentioned about the shift from collective support, community support to individualism, saying we went from being a community that always helped each other to grow and persevere to becoming a lot more selfish. Therefore, while external sources like social media were reported as source of awareness, they were also seen as contributors to disconnection and risk, leading people in their communities to adopt values that conflict with their community norms. Another important theme was the normalization of trauma, especially from violence and displacement as a barrier of emergency preparedness. Like youth shared that their communities often respond to crisis with silence or temporary measures rather than focusing on long-term prevention or meaningful healing. For example, the youth said, people don't question why it might have happened, and they are so used to going through trauma because of the background they come from. They don't even think of it as trauma. Like another youth explained, lack of deeper conversation, saying, gun violence still happen to this day. I feel when someone passes away, the community kind of comes together, but we don't talk about how we should stop this. We don't talk about how we should move forward from this. So they noted that people often don't even recognize their experiences as trauma. Youth emphasize that stigma surrounding mental health. They explain that mental health is so often seen as a taboo subject, especially among older adults. There's a strong fear of judgment. So this shows how stigma can keep people from accessing the very care that could help them. Now talking about youth visions to emergency preparedness planning, they expressed a strong desire to be seen as active contributors, not just recipient of support. They even mentioned themselves as gatekeepers, explaining they can be medium to reach older adults in their homes and community. They recommended involving young people in emergency planning and leadership roles, especially through school or community-based organizations. Participants also suggested youth should be seen as a community asset and part of the solution. They emphasized starting with some informal relationship building events such as cultural celebrations, games, shared meals as a way to build their trust, and then gradually introduce service opportunities to promote emergency preparedness. They also emphasize the importance of clear, culturally relevant communication. They suggested using trusted messengers to deliver emergency information, such as community elders and spiritual leaders, or creating promotional videos with familiar faces, someone from their community whom they know or can relate to. They suggested sharing emergency preparedness information through YouTube, Telegram, or different other social media and community centers and religious sites. They also suggested adding multilingual translators to 911 services to help bridge urgent language gaps. Now, talking about youth visions to emergency preparedness planning, they expressed to be seen as active contributors. Sorry. Finally, youth stressed the need to build on existing cultural and faith-based networks, such as religious sites already serve as trusted spaces and should be recognized as key partners during crisis. Rather replacing these traditional systems, they recommend that public health and emergency organizations should work with them. They mentioned that the biggest type of interventions we usually have stem from religion. Also, they emphasize community programs and helping each other to become aware and learn from each other. Like one said, we should focus more on our community and things like that. I feel like if we were to take what we discussed today within our community and spread the awareness that we are not really aware. I think that would be good too. So therefore, the takeaway here is clear. Social support and culturally grounded engagement is very much essential for emergency preparedness. So this was all from my end and the voices of youths from the focus group discussion. Now I pass it to Jet to continue the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Isha. The youth had very important things to say, and I really enjoyed being part of that youth focus group. We had 2 youth from each of the community members, and they had so much great things to say and so much information to share with us. So now I'll be talking about social media outreach that we did and some information dissemination that we did for this grant. Okay, so for social media outreach, let's start with information dissemination first. So getting critical information out on time can make all the difference, especially during emergencies and crises. Our community health and wellness team led extensive information dissemination efforts to ensure communities had access to life-saving knowledge. These efforts were carefully documented in Apricot under the weekly tally form. That's what you see here, this chart. And then between May and August, in total, from all of the 5 communities, we had 237 direct contacts and distributed over 30,000 educational materials. Just for the Somali community, I was in charge of the information dissemination since I represent the Somali community. I was born in Somalia, I was born in Abu Dhabi. And for the community, for my community, I had a total of 1 contact, and I distributed 5,348 materials. I wanted to make a distinction between materials distributed and contacts. Materials distributed just means that you sent a flyer or a website with information or a video or something to the clients and there was no follow-up. Whereas a contact means there was a follow-up, maybe the client had more questions about the flyer and you had a conversation with them that lasted less than 15 minutes. So that is the difference between a contact and a materials distributed. For anything over 15 minutes, we tracked on another form called the individual family encounter form. But for this project, we only focused on the weekly tally. So that's what was reported. I want to give myself a shout out. Too often we don't celebrate ourselves. I was able to share critical information that mattered to my community in a culturally and linguistically appropriate way, while also coordinating everything else in this project. So everything that you've seen today that's been being presented, I was in charge of coordinating it. And I'm so grateful to the cross collaboration platform that we have with, Dr. Saruna and Miami University, Ohio Moss, and just other organizations like Canvas today that are the media team for the videos. And yeah, it's just, I couldn't have done any of this by myself, and I thank everyone. So for social media, the community health and wellness team basically created all of the content. So this is specifically for the Somali community. I created these social media posts, and then we translated all of the posts into multiple languages. So here are my 4 posts. During the grant, there was extreme heat. Like we had some days where it was really, really hot. And I decided, hey, let me go ahead and educate my community about extreme heat. Yes, we're from Africa, but I don't think the sun here is the same as the sun of Africa. So, but yeah, just telling people how to stay cool during the heat, and then just sharing people who's at most risk, right? The elderly are at most risk for extreme heat. And then flood emergencies is often seen in my community too. And then also just household chemical emergencies. I've seen that sometimes certain chemicals are not put away in my community and kids might have access to it. So I just wanted to share, hey, something should be put away because you might not see it as a hazard, but it could be a hazard for your children. And then also cybersecurity. I know with the digital era, there's so much going on right now, and I just wanted to share with my community how they can stay safe online. This is the video that I made for my community. It's on attack. It was to address attacks in public places. When I lived in Kenya for a little bit, you just didn't know. There are certain places where you just have to hold your breath and just, pray to God or something. So this is why I made a video about this, because with everything going on back home, we've experienced a lot of violence back home, even in the countries that we flee to, like Kenya, for example, we've experienced violence. In the United States, we've experienced violence. So I just wanted to share, how people can stay safe in public places. Public spaces are important for our communities, providing places to gather, play, and relax. But emergencies can happen anytime, anywhere. Be ready, know the evacuation routes, locate emergency exits, and identify safe spots. Get trained on basic first aid and know how to contact emergency services. Okay, so that was the video that I made for my community. So we try to keep the video short. We try to put visuals in them, and we also try to make them translated in the languages of the community. So this was for the Somali community, the video that I created. In total, we had a total of 68, in total, we made a total of 8 videos as a team, the Community Health and Wellness team, and 21 posts. Our initial goal was just to make 6 videos and 20 posts. So we definitely went above and beyond for this project. So now I wanted to share some of just the outreach that was shared on ETSS platforms. So a total of 68 posts were shared across ETSS social media platforms. The content reached 3,669 people, generated 1,186 impressions, and received 69 direct engagements. Facebook had the widest reach, LinkedIn generated the most impressions, and Instagram had the highest engagement rates. Beyond the numbers, we built connections, trust, and accessibility across communities by relying on our diverse team and being culturally and linguistically appropriate always. So this is just some of the kits that we built for this grant. So for this grant, we partnered with JPS Printing to make 250 kits for the grant, and we distributed 50 kits to each community-based organization that we were working with. And here are just some of the items that were in the kits. So we had just like some emergency radio, carbon monoxide detector plus smoke detector, and just some translated Atom H materials, and a COVID-19 test, fire blanket, and just a bunch of other important things that our community might not have access to on hand. And we told each community-based organization to give it out to the respective community when they had an emergency beforehand, so that they could be ready for one. So now I just want to quickly talk about the collaborative platform for crisis response and referral. So this is just a platform where EMA providers, behavioral health professionals can reach out to me directly, ask me for, hey, I have a community right now that I'm working with, maybe the Afghan community, Bhutanese community, Congolese, Ethiopian, Eritrean, or Somali, and say, do you have any contacts that can help me while I work with this community? So for the Somali community, we had a total of 17 contacts, and there is my contact information there. So feel free to either shoot me, you can call me, and if I don't pick up, please leave me a voicemail or a text message, or you can reach me by email. I think email is always the fastest route to reach me. So if you have anybody that you want to get in contact with from the Somali community, we have a total of 17 contacts. Please reach out to me and I can get you directed to them. So now I just wanted to cover some policy implications and strategy recommendations for the Somali community. So first, develop Somali language resources in the Somali language. As the presenter mentioned earlier, we have two dialects, so Afmaimai and Mahatiri. So for Afmaimai, I don't speak it personally, but I know there's many people that speak both dialects. So just finding somebody that does, or just finding somebody that might just work specifically with the Afmaimai Somali community or the Mahatiri Somali community. So, and then integrate mental health awareness into resources. So just talking about the importance of mental health, I think when we hear the mental health in my community, we tend to shut down. So just explaining to them, hey, it's not bad. You want to have good mental health, and let's talk about how we can have good mental health. And then definitely addressing the stigma, saying, hey, is this stigma actually helpful? We've had it for a very long time. And is it working for us, or do we need to talk about mental health and how to address the stigma? And then leverage trusted Somali leaders and mosques. So we heard from two Somali community members today. So reaching out to them or going to the mosque, as I mentioned earlier, and just talking to them and dropping off multilingual materials to the mosques as well, so that people just coming to the mosque can just have access to these resources. You want to also engage Somali youth in emergency preparedness. As you heard earlier from the youth focus group, these youth want to get involved. So definitely involve them, find ways to involve them. Maybe if it's just giving a way for that, they can do a project on something like emergency preparedness or something. Finding a way to involve them would be very helpful for the Somali community. And the reason why is because, the youth are, they're a bridge between the older generation and the newer generation, the younger generation. So talking to them, they can tell you, hey, maybe we should approach this differently because, older generation might not want to hear it this way. So just engaging them would be very helpful. And then to translate emergency alerts and materials into Somali, both in Afmaimai, and I don't know if there's an actual written Afmaimai language, but if there's not, videos work. Videos work. Find somebody that speaks the language and ask them, hey, do you consent to being recorded? And can we make a video about mental health? And that will be very, very helpful. And then ensure preparedness programs are culturally and religiously appropriate. Most Somalis are Muslims, so just making sure that that everything aligns with that view. And then implement gender-sensitive strategies, improving access to access for Somali women by addressing mobility, caregiving, and privacy concerns. So if they don't have transportation to get out of the house, finding a way to get them out the house, whether it's quota passes or transportation vouchers or something like that. And then caregiving, they mostly take the role of caregiving. So just saying, hey, what do you need? How can we assist you when you're caregiving? And then also the privacy concerns earlier. We talked about making sure that women are served by women, because sometimes depending on the Somali woman, she will not talk to a man. So just making sure there's a woman available so that if there are any privacy concerns, they can be addressed. And then using mobile platforms and social media such as WhatsApp, YouTube. My community uses WhatsApp a lot. So just using that. So now the resource walkthrough, we've gone through this extensively already in the past, but here's just some resources that ETSS offers. We have the Adult Services, Youth Department Resettlement, and the Grassroots Initiative. So check out our website to see more about resources. And then here are some just resources that we translated, reverse translated for Adam H. If you just click the link 988 resources, Adam H. Board of Franklin County, you can find the multiple languages. And then all of our information was sourced from ready.gov, and there's the link for that.